Welcome to Yeshiva Daf. Shir sponsor Lui Nishmas Am Yakosholm Lampa Sitzchok. We're holding in Metzia Daf Nuntes. We're going to be starting Daf Nunchesamud base in the bottom. This Daf is a Daf which is full of agato. Be'ez Hashem, we're going to be sending the short machshav on the Daf, three recordings on three sugyas that we have in the Daf. Well, as we learn the Daf, we'll try to mention some of the inyonim that the Mefarshim point out, but try to stick as much as possible to the pshat because it's such a molle v'godush daf. So the Gemara says the following. We're starting daf from Chesed base at the bottom, the last line. Omar Rab Chana Omar B'Yochanan Noyach loy with the fletes with daf on top. Noyach lo adam she'avoy al sofek eshes ish ve'al yal bi b'chaver b'ravim. It's better for a person to. It's less of a problem, as the Mefarshim point out. For a person to have a relationship with an eshes ish, misofik, it's a maybe sofik, maybe eshes ish, and not to cause embarrassment to his friend. We know that. So David HaMelech is complaining, and he's saying, B'tzali, when things are going bad, they're happy, and they gather, and they're tearing, and they're not quiet. What is he talking about? If they would go and tear up my flesh, there won't be no blood coming out. Why? They embarrass me, so there's no blood. That's what we said. Makes him white. The blood goes away, so to speak. Even when they're doing the goyim b'holus, they tell him, David, someone who has a relationship with Eshes, what's his misa? I tell them, the misa is bechenek. Yeah, there is a misa bechenek based in. There's chek lo. Someone who embarrasses his friend, so you guys coming to embarrass me, look, you're worse than me. Says the Gemara. Now, just before we go on in the Gemara, just to point out, the first we ask, the Tosfos ask it, Rashi really points out that David HaMelech was, what was the affair of David HaMelech? He was with Bathsheba. Now Bathsheba, we learned in the Gemaras that anybody who went to Chayolish of his David, all the soldiers of his David, they used to give a get to their wife. So what's the problem? So Rashi explains that here, when Uriel gave a get to Bathsheba, it was a get, but tonight, it was a condition. If he doesn't come back at the end of the war, he's Eshes ish. So in the meantime, it's a suffix. Maybe she's married, maybe she's not married. That's what's called a suffix Eshes ish. Tosfos argues, there are many rights of Tosfos, but Tosfos says, Shitas Rabbeinu Tam, is that the soldiers of Beis David used to give a full get to their wives. Any soldier who went to war, he gave a get to his wife. When he came back, he remarried her. So what's the problem? Suffix Eshes ish? It looks like Eshes ish. There wasn't a real Eshes ish, it looks like Eshes ish. So, side according to Rashi, side according to Tosfos, it's not so clear what the Soinim of David said. At the end of the day, she wasn't Eshes ish. She looked like Eshes ish. What are they trying to say? So it's a little hard to understand. The Ben Yoda says there's something about it. He says, the Gemara says they were dealing with Negoim ve'olus. Why are they dealing with Negoim ve'olus? What's the point to say that? He says, we know why Negoim come? Because a person speaks bad about his friend. They wanted David HaMelech to say mitoso b'chenek, and his words will cause him to die. Even though he doesn't deserve miso. But he will cause miso, like similar to what we have, that kill a tzaddik, I feel a chinam mibo, when a tzaddik says something bad, it happens anyway. That's what happened to David HaMelech. So that's what they wanted him to say mitoso b'chenek. Says the Gemara, Marzuki Batura Omarav, Omar Marzuki Batura Omarav, V'amelo Omar Rav Chana Bar Bizlo Mavshum Chasido, V'amelo Rabbi Yochanan Mavshum Shir Bar Yochai, different man Omarim, Noach Lo Odu She'apil Hatzor Lekif Shanei, it's better for a person to jump into the fire. V'al Yalbi B'Chavir B'Ram, he shouldn't embarrass his friend. We know that, Mitomer. Tichtiv Hi Mutzeis V'Yishol Choil Chamil. She was going out to be burned, and she sends to her father-in-law, to who? Which Tamar sends to Yehuda. Right? They were choyshe Tamar, that she was mezaneh, so they're going to burn her, and really she was with her father-in-law, which in those days was mutter, as the Ramban explains in Chumash. So she doesn't want to embarrass Yehuda. So she says to him, she says in Meremis, she didn't tell him clearly, I had a beila with you. Why? Because it would embarrass him. So better for her to get burned than to embarrass Yehuda. Don't hurt, don't insult, don't cause tsar to your friend, Needs to be a mitzvah, someone who is with you to her mitzvahs, meaning a yid. A yid, you have the Yisrael knows specifically about a yid. Person should be very careful not to upset his wife. Because she cries, it's easier for her to cry. So when you mitzar her, the tsar is much more effective. The Maral goes on to explain, because the wife is subject to the husband. She cares about the husband. What the husband does really affects her more than anybody else. A regular person can be insulted, but he has his own life. By a isha, she is all totally in her husband. And if he insults her, the insult goes down so strongly, and it brings the dima. And the dima is so bad, as the Gemara goes on and says, from the time Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, in alu shari tefillah, all the shari and tefillah are closed. Shneimar gamez ak ve'shavea so tefillah. Shmuel Kivyochel closed the tefillah. Maral goes on to explain. Of course, tefillah is answered, but it has to be a very strong tefillah. Regular tefillah is not answered, not easily, because the whole structure of the world was destroyed in the Churban Beis Hamikdash. V'havabi sheshari tefillah nalu shari demoyis lo nalu. Crying is always answered. Shneimar shiva tefillah Hashem v'shavasi azino. Please listen to my tefillah. That's what Maral points out. Tefillah, I need people to do a special kiviyach, a special effort. Please listen to my tefillah. Please put effort to hear my shavel. My tear, he doesn't have to hear. It's very easy. He sees it. Just don't ignore it. Answer it. Not sure the demon goes straight to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A person who follows his wife's advice, he should go and get him. He goes to get him. It says the pasuk there that Achav, why did he was over Avera? Because he followed Isabel, his wife. People say, if your wife is short, you should bow down, put your head down, and whisper to her, meaning get her advice. It depends. Things in the house, the woman is in charge. But things in the world, don't follow your wife's advice. Or pshat is anything to do with your shemayim, tell you mitzvahs, they don't follow the wife. But whatever has to do with the technical, physical things that you follow the wife, here the Maharal goes on to say, because the Isha is be'etzim, she represents the chomer in the world, the physicality in the world. And the Ish represents the ruchnius. So each one has this job, what he's supposed to do. All, maybe just to add, that the Hemshech of the Gemara is, a person should not be mitzar his wife. But on the other hand, doesn't mean he has to listen to everything your wife says. And a person has to have the chachma, to have the shikul adas, how to listen to his wife when he's supposed to, and not to upset her. And we'll see more as the Gemara goes on to see that a person has to respect his wife, as we'll see in a moment. All the sharim were closed except for shari. No, I mean a person who causes damage to his friend, and after Churban Beis Hamikdash is much harder to get for this din to come to Shemayim. But shari no, it does. He's on the wall with a measurement tape, and a person doesn't go based on the measurement, he ruins the world. Then it comes to him, similar to Dima, as the Maharal says. Everything HaKadosh Baruch Hu is different with Malachim. But I know he does himself. It's he himself. There's three things that the door doesn't close, and they always can come and complain. Are sugis, the gezel, stealing, that's the pasuk we just had. That's always in front of me. They're making me angry. Always in front of me. And the ayin b'Maharal that goes on to explain why these three specific things, what is the common theme between them. The first should explain, talking about a person should make sure that there is food in the house. If a fight and anger comes in Beis Adam, it'll at least get food if there's nothing to eat. In other words, a person should be making a shtadlis to have a bracha and shefa in the house. When you have chitim of soiva, so then there's shalom in the house. When the barley ends from the pitcher, it comes in the fight in the house. So a news brings a fight. The person has to do the shtavus not to be poor. person has to be very careful with fush that we just mentioned. When is Am Yisrael called poor? When they don't have a missing grain. It says they were planted, nothing would grow. And then they had a war. They became poor. So they call poor when there's no tefur. So tefur is the food in the house. That's what a person has to be, because especially shtadlis, to have that in the house. Says the Gemara, and this concludes everything together. Person should be very careful to respect his wife. The bracha comes when his wife is in the house. Avram was made to, the Apar was made to Avram because of Sarah. That's a remez. The bracha comes for the wife. That's what Rava told the people of Rabbi respect your wife in order for you to become rich. So here comes the biggest side. The biggest side is that the richness in the house, the bracha comes for the wife. But a person needs to come and make the wife, the ikar, it's a mechaber, has to respect her in order for the bracha to come. Because why? Explains the Maharal and others, the bracha comes through the man. And it's chal on the house, which is the wife. So if he aims himself towards the wife, he respects the wife, everything goes towards the wife, so the bracha that he brings goes to the wife, goes to the house. But if he doesn't give cover to his wife, it doesn't go to him, because he doesn't aim, so to speak, towards the house. So the ikar avodah is to do the bracha towards the wife. It says the Gemara now, and that comes the famous Gemara, what's called Tonu Shalachnoi. What is it talking about over here? The Mechlekes that we show you how to understand. And Rashi says, we talk about they had small pieces of clay, and they stuck it together with sand. So Shaila is, what's the ikar? Is it the clay that gets tuma, or the sand doesn't get tuma? They explain a little differently, that they did a pile of clay, and in between there was sand. And again, the question is, what's the ikar? Is it the sand or the clay? Rabbi Elazar says it's tar. It's fine. That's not, doesn't get tuma. V'chachoi says it's tar. Says the Gemara in the Fruit Testament base. V'zeu tanur shalachnoi. This is called tanur shalachnoi. This oven that they discussed, if it cuts tumor or not, it's called tanur shalachnoi. Ma'achnoi, why it's called achnoi? Amav Yehuda Mashua shekif v'dvorim ka'achno zu v'timo. They, so to speak, surrounded the Rabbi Elazar with rayos like a snake. Achnoi is referring to a snake. They surround him with rayos to say, this is Tana. Tana. So Rabbi Elazar comes and he argues back. They brought him rayos and he argued everything back. So now this is a very, very important Gemara, very sadistic Gemara regarding Tershah Baal Peh. If we pass like me, if I'm allowed to pass like me, I want the carob tree to prove it. So the carob tree moved 100 amo. Says 400 amo. It moved. He says, sorry, not giving a rye from the tree. If the rye is like me, look at the water. So the water started going backwards. That's not good enough proof. The walls of his Medrash will prove my point. He too they were about to fall. So the Rabbi Shua said to the walls, they're arguing halacha. Well, what are you getting involved? They didn't fall because Rabbi Shua said they're not to fall. They didn't go back because the Blazer said for them to fall. Until today, they're still leaning. You want to prove my halachas like me? Me Shemayim to bring halachah. Yot the Basko of Armulen Kia Basko, it says Malachem Metzia Rabbi Elazar Shalacha Kemoisu B'chol Makar. You have to go with Rabbi Elazar. Amud B'Shua Raglav Omar. Lo Yiba Shemayim. We don't pass Kabes Shemayim. My love Shemayim or V'Yiba Shkanit No Toyu Merasina Toyke from Rasinai Ve'ei Meshgichim Basko. We don't listen to Basko. Shvakatavta Ba'Rasinai B'Toy. You wrote Rasinai. Give it in the Toyu. Chirabim Lahatus. You go based on the roof. Ashkei Rabbi Nosson Rabbi Nosson meets Leo Navi. What did Hashem do when he heard this argument? He was smiling. So the game, he says, my children won. So there's a lot to say about this whole shtickle Gemara. Just to mention one thing, the Mefarshim speak about what was the first rayas of the carob tree, the water, and the bespeilish walls. So the Vilna Goyen is brought down the name of the Vilna Goyen. In order to be kohen Torah, you need to have istapkus v'mut. Person should not live rich life. And the second thing is the person has to be an anov. And the third thing has to be very omel b'Torah. These are the three things. So he says, the Vilna Goyen, these are the three rayas that Rabbi Elazar says. Number one was the carob tree. Carob tree means, shows that a person, he eats very little, he just eats a carob. Number two is the water, shows that it's very low. That's the symbol of another. The third thing is Beis HaMedrash, learning Torah. So he says, he wanted to say that he has all the milas of Kinyan Torah. Mashal goes in a similar idea that they wanted to prove it from here, and all the proofs that he brought, they proved the opposite. Then comes the point that Kea Basko, the Shaila is, that's what all the Mepharshim tried to explain. The Basko says Aloch Rabbi Elazar. So how do we go against that? So the Ben Yoda says something. He says something very. He says the pshat is the Basko was just a test to test the Chachamim to see if they will, say the point that they have to say. Achei Rabim Latus. Do you say that or not? So it was really just that Baruch put it there, the Basko, as a nisoyan to the Chacham. The Maharal says something, a big yisoid. He says, like this: a Basko is lower than Torah. There's different levels of Gilui HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the world. And there's a Baskoil, there's a Nevuah, there's a Ruach HaKodesh. The Torah is the highest. So the Baskoil is a lower level. In the lower level, it could be Allah like a blazer. But the Torah comes to a much higher place, and the Torah was given to human beings for them to desire. So it doesn't matter if from a higher sphere comes Allah like a blazer, because we pass it like the Torah. More about this, Beis Hashem and the Shua Machshava. So the Gemara, all the tires of blazer was matire. They burned it. And they put him into a chayrim or a nidui. Big discussion that we show him. I go into it. What exactly is what the birchu that they did? What was the level of nidui chayrim that they put Rabbi Elazar? Who's going to be the one telling Rabbi Elazar that he was put in chayrim? I will go. Maybe someone improper will go. Cause the world to be destroyed. What was the reason he put him in the cher? Because he was not willing to mevatel das to the rabbi. Master Bekiva love shchoyim, he sat shchoyim, wore black, covered himself with black. The Yosho the fun of Berichuk Arba Amas. He stood 4 Amas in front of Rabbi Elazar. Amar Rabbi Elazar, Kiva Mayoimi in mind. Why are you wearing black and you're far away 4 Amas? Amar Rabbi Kimendumili, I think Shechaverim Bedeilim Mimcha. No, he said it in a soft way. I think you're in cher. Abu Karab Gado, so he tore his clothing. The Chaz with love took his shoes. Finished with the Yashal Galakag, he sat on the floor. The Zol grain of the Mars, and he started crying. A third of the olives were destroyed. A third of the wheat was destroyed. A third of the barley. Some say also the dough in the hands of the Isha inflated. Anger. However, Rabbi Elazar looked, he got burnt. In other words, there was anger, and the anger was inflicted on the world. Gil was in a boat. There came a big wave to drown him because he was the Nasi and he was responsible for this nidur. It's because of Rabbi Elazar. It's known in front of you. I didn't do it for my own covet. I didn't do it for the covenant of my parents, of the house of the Nasi. It's for you. In order to avoid machlekes. So the sea quieted down. Ima Shalom, that was the name of this woman. She was the wife of Rabbi Elazar. She was a sister of Gamliel. In other words, Rabbi Gamliel and the Nasi and Rabbi Elazar and Urkanus were brothers-in-law. She didn't allow Rabbi Elazar to do Nefilas Apayim, because Nefilas Apayim is a time that brings din to the world, and she knew that will bring a lot of din to the world. It was Rish Chodesh. She got mixed up between Mal and Chasar, meaning she thought it was Rish Chodesh, but it really wasn't Rish Chodesh. Meaning the Rish Chodesh was supposed to be the next day. She thought Rish Chodesh was today. Rish Chodesh was only the next day. So Anya came a poor man and knocked on the door. She gave him bread, and he was doing Nefilas Apayim. She saw him falling during Nefilus Apayim. Amalei kum katot le'achi. You get up, you kill my brother. Hada'achi nafesh shaboy came on the voice, came on the shofar announcing, you basically the shochid, the Rabbi was nifter. In other words, if your Lezos koyach and Nefilus Apayim was to cause such din, the Rabbi will be nifter. Amalei minoya das, how do you know this sort of thing? Amalei kam kohen beis abiyabay. I know from my grandfather. I know that's the kesha to our sugya. That's shechus our sugya. He calls you a pain. When you do the pain, you do the Nefilus Apayim. That's what it comes in front of a Kosh Baruch Hu. And then even though Rabbi Gamliel was correct to do it, as we saw in the case of the boat, still punishment comes. Someone who causes tsar to a ger, or three lavim. Someone who pressures it, asks for his money back. Why man is 3 lavim? Nechtim shlosh lavim. Ger lo yisoyne. V'chiyagur t'chiyabar tzichem lo yisoyne lo yisoy. V'lo yisoyne yishiz ha-misoy. It says 3 times a lav. V'ger b'chlal ha-misoy. It says don't cause pain to your friend, and he's part of the friend. There's also 3 lavim. It says regarding pressing the ger. Lo yisvichatzenu. V'ger lo silchatz. And lo yisiel kenoishe. V'ger b'chlalo. It talks about a friend. Don't be pressing too much weight to your friend. The ger is included. Both shlosh lavim. You have to understand why the Gemara and the Havamim thought it's only 2, and then we first should discuss it. Says why we find 36 places the Torah says to be careful with a ger. Some say 46. So the first you bring, believes the Ben Yoyoda, the 36 places where it says ger alone, and the 46 places when it says ger yosef v'almana. So ger alone is 36. Ger with the yosef v'almana is 46. What's Surah? Rashi explains, the Creator says to Rashi, says that he has a yitzhara and he's pushed easily to stop keeping mitzvahs. So when you cause him a tsar, you may stop it to keep mitzvahs. Says don't mistreat the ger because you yourself you were a ger. You were a stranger in Mitzrayim. If you have a mum, don't speak about it to somebody else. In other words, you had a problem. You are a ger yourself. Don't tell him, oh, you are a ger too. Because if it applies to you, don't apply to somebody else. Just people say, the zokif leskivo b'dyukte, someone who has a bad name in his mishpacha, right? Rashi says, there's somebody in his family who was hanged. It's a little embarrassment to the mishpacha. Someone who was hanged by the king. So don't say hang a fish. Even though it has nothing to do with hanging. The word hanging should not be in your lexicon. A person who has an embarrassment of hanging should not mention hanging. So the Gemara is saying basically you should know, don't cause any pain to a ger. You yourself were a ger. When something applies to you, don't push it on somebody else. You yourself should not do something which for you is the wrong thing. So if you yourself were a ger, you can't come and embarrass and cause pain to a ger. So we'll stop over here on this daf. As mentioned, in the Shom Achshav and the daf, we'll discuss some of the of this very, very lengthy Agadah daf.